We talked about Wes early in this conversation. I think one of the things that, one of the reasons why like we're very close is because we think the same way about leaving people behind, right? And if you leave, any black people behind, you've left all black people behind, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? And I think we do that all the time because you didn't go to Harvard, because you don't have a JD MBA, right? Because you haven't started a company, because you don't have money, you don't live at the Four Seasons, right? All whatever the thing is that we separate ourselves on, we do that consistently, and it hurts us more than it helps us, right?
Ever wonder what it takes to unlock true Black innovation and wealth creation? You're in the right place.
This is From Chains to Links, where the brightest Black minds, entrepreneurs, academics, creatives, and futurists reimagine what it means to build generational wealth in a thriving Black community.
We're not just talking about change, we're building it. Stick around because this conversation is about to spark something different.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From Chains to Links. I am Ifeoma Ike, one of your co-hosts. I'm joined here with Luke Cooper.
Let's go.
Oh, and he's ready. So he would describe himself as entrepreneur and father, investor, professor, all the things. But I'm going to turn it over to you now because you're already in the episode. And you also live in Baltimore.
I do.
Yeah, but are you from Baltimore?
I'm not, but I'm for it. Not from Baltimore, but I'm for Baltimore.
Yeah.
Baltimore has a high concentration of black people, one of the highest concentrations of black people in the country. There's a lot of the political leadership, looks like me. They talk about the issues that I care about. I think there's a dearth of resources there that, we're still trying to piece together. But I think that's true of every city. My journey to Baltimore was an interesting one. I got there in 2001 after law school. Okay. And I just kind of stayed, and I've done a lot of great things. I think, there's a lot of great things I've been able to achieve in my career as a result of being in Baltimore, and I'm happy to get into those things today.
Yeah, no. Before we get off of Baltimore, a little birdie told me that you were kind of cool with the governor, Mr. Wes Moore, who used to run an organization called Robin Hood.
He did.
My former boss for the city of New York now runs it now, but we don't hear a lot about that type of leadership, or not a lot of municipalities, I should say, have that type of leadership where black governor, but also black and young black mayor of such a diverse city. How do you think that impacts the way policy is shaped, and especially when we talk about entrepreneurship, right? What is the relationship between policymakers and what hits people on the ground?
Yeah, I think it's one that comes back to leadership, right? And being able to see yourself in somebody else, right? And the fact that you have a governor that represents all those things that you just mentioned allows people to see that they can go achieve those same kinds of things, right? But I think it all starts with the kind of person that you are. Like, aside from politics and all that stuff, if you're not a good person, if you're not already a good leader, why would I follow you as the governor, as the senator, as the anything, right? And that's just what Wes has been, right? We've been friends for 15 plus years, and we'll have a lot of great things to talk about today. But when our daughter was sick, she was 4 years old, and she had stage 4 cancer. As I was building my last company, Wes would show up to my house every day and make sure we had food and all kinds of things at that time, right? And so, it is really who he is when he says that he's for the people. Right?
Yeah. I've heard some of your talks. I think because we're connected on LinkedIn, I don't think it's stalking. Because we're connected. But I have
only if I can see
heard you. Right. So it's not stalking, right?
No,
okay, great. But I've heard some shorts of the way you speak about your path. A lot of people come to you for advice around entrepreneurship, innovation. Your background in law included M&A, or mergers and acquisitions. But you always center your journey, like where you started and how it guides the way you move. What is that journey? What is like that short, that short condensed version of, your path, and how do you link that that journey to the way that you move and support entrepreneurs today?
Yeah, I think it's a journey of, tragedy to triumph, right? I come from the shit, right? Like I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where in the 1980s, like you were either in a gang, you're some involved in the drug trade in some way, right? My father couldn't avoid it, my uncles couldn't avoid it, my cousins couldn't avoid it. My father, did 20 years in prison, right? And so there were three things that really shaped my narrative arc, right? When I was 12 years old, my father went away to prison for 20 years. That same year, my uncle died. He got killed in our kitchen, stabbed to death. And that same year, my mom also like met this pilot, who she was like just asking like, hey, how do I get my kids to see something different? We've never flown anywhere. And he was so kind to just like take us up. He took us up on a tiny Cessna airplane at a airport that was not far from where we grew up. And so that moment gave me distance from where I grew up, right? So I could see my housing projects where I grew up, and I was like, oh, okay, that's small, that's tiny, relative to the awesomeness of the world, right?
Yeah.
The entirety of the world, which I felt like I could see from the sky,
Yeah.
right? And then like the practical groundedness that brought it all together was a program called NIFTY. Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, and I did that as a 12-year-old as well. I built solar power microwaves.
Wow.
And I sold hot dogs in the microwaves. Right? I
What?
was fucking hungry. Oh, can I drop the F-bomb?
Oh, yeah. No, we drop bombs.
Okay. But yes, I made hot dogs in them, and I sold the hot dogs, and I sold the microwaves, and I
So your microwave worked.
It worked. Yeah, it worked. It worked. I mean, the heat in my house didn't work, but that
Wow.
worked. And I won my science competition. I won my business plan competition. And I think that's one of the key things that we don't talk about is how to build like healthy self-esteem in these kids. We tell them a dream that, just, go be a tech entrepreneur and or go be a lawyer, and like 15 years from now, 30 years from now, you're going to be successful. You got to teach me how to be successful now.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to teach me how to think about, like directing my own like self-autonomy and success and some career and something that I can apply my hand, my skill, my intellect and my intention to now and today, that then brings me, even if it doesn't bring me immediate wealth, it brings me some level of confidence in myself, because these communities that we come from, like Bridgeport, like Baltimore, they're good at one thing, and that's destroying your confidence, destroying who you can be.
Yeah. Building upon this conversation as to like what it takes for young people or young at heart people that are on this journey to figure out how to acquire wealth. You are in the space of venture. Talk to us about, number one, who's ripe for venture. Sometimes it feels like that's a mystery, but there is a reason why so much talk around entrepreneurship and innovation focuses on how much money venture, contributes to businesses and which businesses they contribute to. So unfortunately, we know that Black businesses receive a fraction of that amount. If you are in the intersection of being Black and woman, it's even smaller. What's up with that? But also, who's ripe for venture?
Sure.
I
mean, I don't have all the answers, but and I think there's a lot of trite sort of responses I can make here. Everybody knows that like every business is not a fit for venture, right? That's just the reality of it. Because if I write a check into a company, as a VC, you're expecting a return over some defined period of time, right? You don't write checks; it's not charity, right? And so we've got to get to an outcome, and depending on the kind of business that you have. Is it scalable to a place that it can be either exited through IPO, through strategic acquisition, a financial buyer coming in and making a sort of strategic investment. Like those are the ways that venture capitalists and people in finance materialize the investment that they make.
Yeah.
And that's not true for every business, right? So I think you got to figure that out. I think also, we do know the numbers, right? Less than 1% of all VC goes to Black entrepreneurs. I'm proud that like all of my investments they happen to be Black entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
I think, part of it is that I know Black entrepreneurs. I know how to talk to Black entrepreneurs and help them understand not just sort of like how to be successful in business, but how to be successful with the business, right? Because ultimately you've got to be thinking about the business like an asset that you're building, and then what do you do with it? Despite the fact that VC is less than 1% of all, 1% contributing to Black businesses, the reality is that all of VC, like 90% of the companies still fail, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get to a win?
Yeah.
Because we can't fail, right?
Right.
We don't have I hope to sort of build, Latimer and all the things that I'm doing to a place where Black people actually have the right to fail.
Right.
Because today we don't really have that. So you got to get to a win, and I try to help my entrepreneurs like think about the business almost backwards, right? And so that we can define the outcome before we even, get off the ground.
And I think this is, part of what's so frustrating is that 90% of businesses do fail.
Yeah.
And we are not necessarily given the same grace to participate in it. So yes, there's this conversation about which companies are right for venture, but then there's also this reality that part of experimentation or innovation is experimentation, which means some experiments are successful and some are not. But we are also, unfortunately, conditioned to respond right all the time and be successful all the time. That being said, there could be some tips, support, tools for those that are curious about, pursuing venture. And so what are some of those strategies for those that are like, I'm not sure, but I hear about this and it would be great to have venture capital to help expand or build my business?
Yeah, I think it comes down to like where you are with the business, right? Companies really live in three places. You're the product, you're scaling, or you're optimizing, right? And if you confuse that, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail faster, right? If you're trying to optimize the website and like the branding and all the marketing at the very beginning of a business before you even have a product out the door, like you're going to fail, right? And so like, and VCs that are applied to different stages, right? You don't want to be talking to index ventures, if you're just getting off the ground, because they're mostly a Series B investor, right? And so like understanding the landscape of who invests in what and why they invest in those things, I think is critical.
Yeah.
But then understanding how powerful you are as an entrepreneur, right? I think it's like basketball. We were talking about basketball.
Yeah, my knees are swollen. My knees are swollen.
Right.
I tried to get back into it.
Exactly.
It's cute. Made all the shots, but I was playing horse.
Totally. I remember being able to grab the rim with two hands. I could barely touch it anymore, right?
I tried to touch the bottom of the net. I just looked at it. It was cute.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, like it's just like basketball. If you focus on like all the things that are likely to go wrong when you're shooting the ball, you're probably gonna do those things, right? But if you just lock in on those little V's in the net, right? And so my jump shot is gonna go in every single time. You're gonna have more success.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. We got to realize how powerful we are and not focus on the lack of all the things that we're not getting, right? That's the reality. We know we're not going to get those things. I think there's a pathway to being successful without, necessarily engaging VCs in the way that, more traditional entrepreneurs have. Look, I mean, when I started my last company, I raised $6.5 million for that company. I wound up selling it for 11x to Assurant. It was my second exit to a Fortune 300. When I built that company, $6.5 million sounds like a lot of money. It was the most by any Black entrepreneur in the state of Maryland, right? Most by any Black tech entrepreneur in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
But when I look at my cohort of competitors in that business, 3 white males that had founded a similar company, right? They're all based in California. What multiple would you apply in terms of like how much more money you think they raised than me?
6 times?
Oh man.
10 times?
A lot more. A lot. Keep going.
20 times.
70, almost 70 times. They raised $455 million collectively.
Wow.
Right. And I beat them all. I had better gross margins. I had a better exit. Right. The company now does over $500 million of revenue. Is international. If you have any sort of issue with your phone, 20% of that traffic in terms of insurance related claims goes through my application.
Wow.
Right. Assurant is an incredible company, right? They back T-Mobile and all the carriers. And so when you have an issue with your phone, that's my software supporting you in the background. right? And so we can do incredible things, right? And this is the stuff I told Assurant, when I started the company, right? Because we started the company with the name Assure Vest. Because I was like, all right, these guys are over here, Shurian is over here, right? And so I knew like I was going to take a shot at the market that they couldn't get into. And if I kind of was named similar to them, maybe they would see me, right? And it definitely brought me visibility to them, right? Initially. And then ultimately, I had to do the work of executing, growing the company, 80 plus employees, 1,500 part-time workers, 300% revenue growth year over year to drive that acquisition, right? And even with that, I still had to take a flight out to Vegas on a one-way flight to Vegas to get the deal done, right?
Wow.
A month before COVID. A month before COVID. We closed August 17th, 2020.
Whew.
Yeah.
Whew. All from a hot dog. Damn.
That's right. It's a big hot dog.
Right. We like to ask folks, I think I told you before we started, the soapbox question. The thing that you're like, man, I can talk all day about this, or put in another way, we're not talking enough about this. What do you feel like we're just not talking enough about, especially when it comes to the growth of Black entrepreneurship? And for our audience, a lot of them are innovators, but some of them are also funders and people that are trying to figure out how do we intervene. So just want to ask, what is your soapbox?
I mean, I have a litany of issues that I could talk about and that I think about, pretty frequently. But I think one of the things that, I see emerge in all the rooms that I'm in today, because I'm very fortunate to be in some incredible rooms with, a great diverse number of people that, have different perspectives. And one thing I see is like a level of colorism, right? And the Black community that we don't talk about, right? And I think it extends beyond.
Is this coming from a Black man?
A dark-skinned Black man at that, right?
Dark-skinned Black man, man. Shout out to dark people.
100%.
All people, but dark-skinned people. But I'm saying this because, a lot of my work at my company, Pink Cornrows, is getting a little bit deeper past these like surface conversations as to what's happening in our institutions and our spaces. Colorism, beauty politics, to an extent, fat phobia. We don't track how much decision making is based on who enters the room. We don't even want to talk about it. So anyway, keep going.
And like we talked about Wes early in this conversation. I think one of the things that one of the reasons why like we're very close is because we think the same way about leaving people behind, right? And if you leave any Black people behind, you've left all Black people behind, in my opinion, right? And I think we do that all the time because you didn't go to Harvard, because you don't have a JD MBA, right? Because you haven't started a company, because you don't have money, you don't live at the Four Seasons, right? Whatever the thing is that we separate ourselves on, we do that consistently, and it hurts us more than it helps us, right? And so when I think about like poor people in Baltimore, what is their path? Like, how do you actually get out? When I think about the things that I had to overcome to come from Prequanix projects, right? You need incredible escape velocity to get out of that. And right, so if we're telling these kids every single day that, hey, you're just gonna have to be lucky and get out of it, because I'm not gonna reach back and try to help you out of that situation, or I'm not gonna give you shed any light on like how you can define the pathway so you can get out yourself. It's never going to change. We're going to leave people behind. And we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about how, even in VC, and I see this it's even true of, the VC, industry, which is why I don't call myself a VC. I don't walk around. I'm a VC. Yeah, I've raised a fund. I've got, significant institutions backing me, significant investors backing me. Over almost $100 million of annual recurring revenue across my companies. It's incredible. But like, I don't define myself that way, because a lot of VC define themselves as like, I'm this, special person that has the right to say yes or no to you in terms of, receiving money. And I think our role as successful Black people, it extends far beyond sort of occupying that space, right? And you've got to see all of the ways that we can affect our communities. So we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about that enough.
If you were to say, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, or not to say, if you had a wish as to what every Black family could have to ensure that if they had somebody in their family that wanted to be a successful entrepreneur, that they could make it, what would be in that toolkit? What would that be in that little Lego box?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things, right? I think you know, I think you need courage, right? That's one of the things I think you absolutely need, because at some point you're going to have to make the decision to leave some things behind, right? We don't talk about that enough, right? I think you need a level of autonomy, right? Like, and oftentimes, when people try to help us, especially the younger generation, I think the older generation tends to tell them, oh, you got to do it this way. And like, that's not true. I mean, the world's so different now. There's so many ways to be successful and to get there. I mean, we look at what's happening with content creation and across social media platforms and blockchain, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of like open space, for people to be successful. I think we've got to expand our mind in ways that they can actually be successful. I think you need a level of integrity, right? And people say integrity means like, oh, well, are you being honest? I see it as like, are you being honest with yourself?
Yeah.
Right. Are you communicating when you fail? Are you communicating with yourself in a way that like leads you to the understanding of why you failed or why you haven't, been able to be successful in a given situation? I think you need that. I think, I could go on. There's a bunch of things that I think you need in that toolkit, but I think, key to all of it is like self-love, right? If you love yourself and you understand that, like, the way you treat yourself and the way you think about yourself and the power of your own thoughts and how you apply them to yourself can impact your life, I think we would think very differently about the things that we say, right? I used to say all the time, oh, I'm an old man. I ain't old. I just climbed the Camelback Mountains last week. Right, with a guide, right?
Right, not by yourself.
Had a guide. I was definitely not by myself, right?
Right.
But I climbed Camelback Mountains last week. I'm not old, right?
Yeah.
And so I think how we talk about ourselves, and we're taught to like, self-denigrate sometimes, and those are not healthy skills, right? So I think, those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be successful. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I'm leaving out. I'm
surprised capital ain't in there.
It's not critical at the very beginning.
Really?
It's not critical. No, you're so powerful on your own, and like people don't realize it. Like my first couple customers was just picking up the phone, calling people, right? And then when I got like someone to say, well, yes, you can come talk to me, like I was there, right? When I got that first customer to say, okay, well, I'll give you a POC or a proof of concept or a pilot. I was like, okay, I live here now, right? Because I want to understand everything about how you think about my product, right? So when Coca-Cola, signed up with us as one of our first customers, I literally like stayed in their IT department for a week, right? And they was just gracious enough to just give me enough room to do all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But like that didn't require money; it just required patience, time, relentless question asking, right? From a place of like non-bias.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't start from a place of, oh, well, my thing is amazing. Well, how can I make it more amazing? No, my thing, I don't know if it's going to be good. Well, wait, why is this not good? Why won't it work? Okay, it works for you. Why won't it work for Pepsi? Why won't it work for Stanford University, Home Depot, Honeywell, AT&T, New York Police Department, other clients of ours, right? That we ultimately acquired over the course of 6 years of hustling.
So our team here at Black Innovation Alliance has a membership of innovator support organizations, Black individuals, Black entrepreneurs who are dedicated to supporting other entrepreneurs thrive and succeed. And we need more. We need more of them on the ground. But there's also this kind of thing where like a lot of people don't know that they exist. I love what you said about leadership when we were talking about Baltimore. How important is it, do you think, to have individuals that obviously are smart, empathetic, know their field, but also identify with the experiences of the entrepreneurs that they are supporting. How does that make a difference in the success of entrepreneurs, which unfortunately the stats show that a lot of entrepreneurs don't even make it to year 3, right?
Sure.
So they're here to make sure that they can get to their 3rd birthday.
It's critical. I mean, it's critical. I mean, I think a lot of times we just don't understand the entrepreneurs that we're in front of. And so the reason why I invest in predominantly Black entrepreneur, enterprise tech Black entrepreneurs, Series A, is because like 1 in 3 of them is like succeeding, right? Well, why is 1 in 3 of them succeeding? Well, because, you know, a lot of times they come from the industry that they're attacking. You know, it's constrained to a sort of a solution that works for a specific area of the enterprise, which is a much easier thing to do than consumer, right? But that aside, right? Even when I talk to them, I think a lot of times we misinterpret certain signals, right? Especially if you don't know Black people,
Yeah.
right? You're just gonna misinterpret certain things, right? And you know, I've heard from my white counterparts at times like, oh yeah, that entrepreneur is awesome, you know, seems like a good business, but he's so cocky. You know, he's so arrogant. You know, she's so self-assured. Like she's not thinking about these other things. Well, she's so committed to just like hiring people, you know, who are you know, just other women, right? Like well, she needs more diversity on that team, right? And I'm thinking to myself, well, a couple things. Like number one, the cockiness thing, I understand. We have to project a level of mettle, of confidence, of, you know, self-assuredness, because every single day someone's trying to attack that.
Right.
And they're not just trying to attack it because I'm in a room with you trying to pitch my business, you know, and trying to get you to be 50% of my Series A. We're facing that in the elevator.
Right.
You know, we're facing that in like these small areas of pockets of life that we live where you know, the realities of this society tell us that, you know, you're less than, right? And so we've got to, you know, combat that oftentimes with a level of just like, you know, over exuberant confidence. And when you start to have real conversations and you build trust with entrepreneurs, and then you are vulnerable to them. I tell entrepreneurs all day, like, yeah, my father was in prison. He did 20 years. He did 12 of 20 years, right? You know, I come from nothing, and this is what I did to, you know, sort of overcome those things, and this is what I've achieved since then. Right. And when we have that level of conversation, you know, all the other stuff goes away. And then we can talk real, you know, directly about some of the challenges that they're facing in the business. The problem with VCs is like they don't always invest in context. Investors, period. I won't even say VCs, but investors, period. Not investing in the context to fully understand you. And then in terms of like how we think about teams, when I started Fixed, you know, I applied to all the accelerators. I got into Techstars eventually, but I got rejected multiple times. And the major rejection was like, well, we like teams. We like to have a team, and you don't really have a team just yet. It's just you. Well, at the time I was a 30-something-year-old, you know, tech entrepreneur, you know, leaving, you know, at the time I had exited my first company, and then I was like teaching maybe or something. I can't remember what I was doing. And like I didn't have other people who had a life like that.
Right.
That would allow me to say, hey, come be a co-founder with me. You know, come join this team. They were working hard and had full-time jobs and all of that. I couldn't convince them to do those kinds of things. And so I'm a product of my community and the realities of my community. We got to think about that and how to bake that into the context of making investment decisions.
One of the things that I love that when I asked you what was in this you know, starter bag, were a lot of these things that don't require capital, right? That is really innate to, you know, who we are as a people. And we like to encapsulate that with this concept of we have the right to innovate, that innovation is our birthright. That, you know, you are a general partner at Latimer Ventures, you know, named after one of our esteemed ancestors, right, and innovators. And I think about all the innovations and all the creations that other people are benefiting from to this day, not only from Black people, but enslaved Black people, right? So when you think of the term right to innovate, what comes to your mind? What what does it look like? What does it feel like? Or how do we embody that right to innovate?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like freedom to me, right? Like the right to innovate means that I can think deeply about, an area of interest to me that, speaks to some level of disruption of an existing way of doing things. And to do that means that I'm not, my mind is not occupied with like whether or not my BGE bill is paid. My mind is not occupied with like, how the hell am I going to pay my kids' tuition because I can't send them to the school, that's in my community. I got to send them to another school that I got to pay for, or they didn't get into the charter school, right? And so like my mind is not occupied with those things. I now have this freedom, right, to think about how to evolve, other areas of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And so I think about it like very much like that. But Black people are always innovating, right? Because like there's a famous quote by I think Edison or maybe Ben Franklin, like innovation or invention is the mother of necessity, or necessity is the mother of innovation. One of those, right? And it's so true, right? Like we're constantly building things and putting things together because of the dearth of capital resources and other
Right.
things that we have around us, right? But I think to the extent that we can put more structure around that and understand how like that kind of thinking, that kind of activity is so close to like building a thing that is very
Yeah.
successful,
Yeah.
right? And but the reality is like there's not enough people, not enough of us that have followed that innovation track to a place of success, to a place of outcomes that then they can help you understand like, oh, well, this is worth your time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it wasn't worth my time. As a 12-year-old, it was worth my time to lock in, play basketball, use basketball, to get a scholarship, to go to college, to then lever that, to go to law school, to get my MBA at Babson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So to lock in those things that then said, okay, well, at a minimum, I can get a job anywhere I want. I can go start a consulting firm. I can go be a lawyer. I can do anything I want. Right? And so it made sense for me to do that. And I think, we've got to like, sort of create these new pathways that allow people to make choices that, are far more broad than just, sort of the things that, are going to take 30 years to materialize.
Yeah.
The problem is most investors don't have that experience. Like 90% of investors they don't know what an exit looks like. They've never had an exit themselves. They've never built a business themselves. And a VC business is very different than a traditional business. It's not the same thing. It's not even close. Right? Fundraising is hard and similar to fundraising as an entrepreneur, but it's not even close.
Yeah.
And I see these VCs, they parade around and they pump their chest like they're doing something incredible, and it's the entrepreneur, right? It's the man in the arena, right? That is the one we should be celebrating.
Yeah. Last final question, 30-second answer. You're in an elevator. You overhear an entrepreneur, Black entrepreneur, say that they may have to shut their company down. What do you say to that entrepreneur before you exit?
Congratulations. Congratulations. Right? You probably made that decision based on, I'm assuming, some level of understanding and data relative to like, customer interest, customer, maybe there's a low level of conversion, right? That's a good thing. You'll need to learn that. Like one of my, we didn't start here, but normally where I start is I talk about my biggest failure. A company I bought out of bankruptcy in the mid 2000s. And $20 million top line business. I was like, this is great. They basically paid me at closing. I was like, the way I structured the deal was amazing. 30 locations. I'm like, and it was not a tech business. And I had to put it back into bankruptcy, right? And I was getting my MBA at the time at Babson. And I remember one of the professors, it was on the front page of the Boston Business Journal. And my face was right there, and he was like, "Well, let's talk about this, Luke," in front of the whole class.
Wow.
Right? And so I had to learn in that moment how to conduct sort of press relations, investor relations. I was learning how to talk about my failure. I was learning how to go through a failure and how to devolve a business. I mean that's a process that is as natural as human existence.
Very hard when, as you mentioned, we are not allowed to fail, but there is something healthy about seeing that space as a lesson and not the end, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Luke.
Thank you.
Oh, man,
I just want to say thank
this-
you for having me on today
Of
to
course.
share my thoughts and to spend this time with you. I
Yeah,
hope this
no.
is valuable to people who are listening.
Super valuable. And you all should absolutely follow Luke. I don't think he'll consider it stalking. You should definitely find him on LinkedIn. But again,
Or
thank you.
Instagram. Instagram's probably
Or Instagram. What's
easier.
your Instagram
it's
handle?
it's just my name, Luke Cooper 81.
Luke Cooper. Okay, 81.
81.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Luke. Thank you all for joining us for this episode of From Chains to Links, where we went through conversations about journeying, about success, about what's actually right for the formation of your business, and also a healthy way of looking about failure. So we hope that you continue this conversation with us. Follow us on our handle, Build with BIA. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Thanks for riding with us on today's journey. If this episode hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend.
Visit FromChainsToLinks.com for more content, and make sure to subscribe on our YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at @BuildWithBIA, and let's keep this movement growing.
The road to true Black prosperity is built together, and we need you to do it.